I think that the underlying premise behind Twitter and all these networks is amazing, that we can communicate with each other. And I use it a lot. There's a subpart of Twitter called Econ Twitter, where we economists tweet to each other and talk about new papers. Something came out in the NBER, the National Bureau of Economic Research, and we share about it. People critique it. I think it's been a godsend because it's really sped up the scientific process, if you can call economics scientific.
Does it get divisive in that little?
Sometimes, yeah, sure. Sometimes it does. It can also be done in nasty ways, and there's the bad parts. But the good parts are great because you just speed up that clock speed of learning about things. Instead of like in the old days, waiting to read it in a journal, or the not so old days when you'd see it posted on a website and you'd read it. Now on Twitter, like people will distill it down, and there's a real art to getting to the essence of things. Mm-hmm. So that's been great. But it certainly, we all know that Twitter can be a cesspool of misinformation. And like I just said, unfortunately, misinformation tends to spread faster on Twitter than truth. And there are a lot of people who are very vulnerable to it. I'm sure I've been fooled at times. There are agents, whether from Russia or from political groups or others, that explicitly create efforts at misinformation and efforts at getting people to hate each other. Or even more important lately, I've discovered is nutpicking. The idea of nutpicking?
No, what's that?
It's a good term. Nutpicking is when you find like an extreme nutcase on the other side, and then you amplify them and make it seem like that's typical of the other side.
Yes.
So you're not literally lying. You're taking some idiot, ranting on the subway, or just, whether they're in the KKK or Antifa or whatever, normally nobody would pay attention to this guy. Like 12 people would see him and it'd be the end. Instead, with video or whatever, you get tens of millions of people say it. And I've seen this, I look at it, I get angry. I'm like, I can't believe that person did something so terrible. Let me tell all my friends about this terrible person. And it's a great way to generate division. I talked to a friend who studied Russian misinformation campaigns, and they're very clever about literally being on both sides of some of these debates. They would have some people pretend to be part of BLM, some people pretend to be white nationalists, and they would be throwing epithets at each other, saying crazy things at each other. And they're literally playing both sides of it. But their goal wasn't for one or the other to win. It was for everybody to be hating and distrusting everyone else. So these tools can definitely be used for that, and they are being used for that. It's been super destructive for our democracy and our society. And the people who run these platforms, I think, have a social responsibility, a moral and ethical personal responsibility to do a better job and to shut that stuff down. Well, I don't know if you can shut it down, but to design them in a way that as I said earlier, favors truth over falsehoods and favors positive types of communication versus destructive ones.
And just like you said, it's also on us, which I try to be all about love and compassion, empathy on Twitter. I mean, one of the things, nutpicking is a fascinating term. One of the things that people do that's, I think, even more dangerous is nutpicking applied to individual statements of good people. So basically, worst case analysis in computer science is taking, sometimes out of context, but sometimes in context, one statement by a person. Because I've been reading The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. I've often talked about Hitler on this podcast with folks, and it is so easy.
That's really dangerous.
But I'm all leaning in. I'm 100% because, it's actually a safer place than people realize because it's history, and history in long form is actually very fascinating to think about, but I could see how that could be taken totally out of context, and it's very worrying
about these digital infrastructure, not just these disseminate things, but they're sort of permanent. So anything you say at some point, someone can go back and find something you said 3 years ago, perhaps jokingly, perhaps not. Maybe you're just wrong, and you made them, and like that becomes, they can use that to define you if they have ill intent. And we all need to be a little more forgiving. I mean, somewhere in my 20s, I told myself, I was going through all my different friends, and I was like, every one of them has at least like one nutty opinion.
Exactly.
And I was like, there's like nobody who's like completely, except me, of course. But I'm sure they thought that about me too. And so you just kind of like learn to be a little bit tolerant that like, okay, there's just,
I wonder who the responsibility lays on there. Like, I think ultimately it's about leadership. Like the previous president, Barack Obama, has been, I think, quite eloquent at walking this very difficult line of talking about cancel culture.
Mm-hmm.
But it's difficult. It takes skill.
Yeah.
Because you say the wrong thing and you piss off a lot of people. And so you have to do it well. But then also the platform, the technology should slow down, create friction in spreading this kind of nut picking in all its forms.
Absolutely. And your point that we have to like learn over time how to manage it. I mean, we can't put it all on the platform and say, you guys design it. And because if we're idiots about using it, nobody can design a platform that withstands that. And every new technology, people learn its dangers. When someone invented fire, it's great cooking and everything, but then somebody burned himself, and then you had to like learn how to like avoid. Maybe somebody invented a fire extinguisher later and what stuff. So you kind of like figure out ways of working around these technologies. Someone invented seat belts, etc. And that's certainly true with all the new digital technologies that we have to figure out, not just technologies that protect us, but ways of using them that emphasize that are more likely to be successful than dangerous.